In this chapter of the book of Yechezkel, Yechezkel Perek Saf, I want to dedicate my learning today. I don't know the exact Hebrew name, to a young man who was killed in the line of action in Gaza named Ben Zussman. There was a person here in Denver before I moved here named Ben Zussman. I know many of his children and grandchildren, and this would have been his great-grandson who was his namesake. His grandfather, who I know well, who's lived in Israel for many years, Aver Zussman, his grandson, who was killed yesterday, or 2 days ago, he was buried yesterday, fighting on behalf of the Jewish people in Gaza. Dedicate his learning to him and of course to all the others who unfortunately are in harm's way in and around Medinat Yisrael at this terrible time. So Yechezkel Perek Chaf b'shana shvit v'chamisha b'asar l'chodesh ba'u anshe miziknei Yisrael lidrosh ad Adonai vayeshvu lefanai. So it's the 7th year and the 10th day of the 5th month. Certain elders of Israel came and sat before me. And so this should be the year about 590. Again, if we go back historically, 597 is the year Yechezkel, along with many others, such as Daniel, most principally Yechonia, the king of Yehuda, are exiled by the Babylonian king. New king Tzidkiyahu is placed as the puppet, and so Yechezkel's years are usually counted in terms of his prophecy, are counted from there. So this should be the year 590, not too long before the imminent destruction that he has spoken about so many times in different ways of Yerushalayim. Vayidvar Adonai elei more, verse 3, pasuk gimel, Ben Adam daber al ziknei Yisrael v'amarta lehem ko amar Adonai Elohim. Halidrosh oti atem ba'im chayani medaresh lachem nu'um Adonai Elohim. The elders of Israel, you want to inquire of God? You're coming to ask me a question? I'm not going to respond to you. Hatishbot otam hatishbot ben adam et toravot avotem hodien. Right? Declare to them all of the terrible deeds of their ancestor. There have been so many terrible deeds that they have done. And you've never asked me before, so all of a sudden you want to hear what I have to say. So Yechezkel is told to tell them a history lesson on the day that I was Bachar, when I chose Israel, and I lifted them up with my own hands in Egypt, and I gave them an oath, and I said, I am your God forever. Bayomahu, in pasuk vav, nasati yadi lahem eretz Mitzrayim el eretz asher tarti lahem. I said I would take them out to a land that I will spy. Tor, like the we call them the Raglim, but in the book of Bamidbar, it's Anashim Latur et Haaretz, like Mordechai and Avril, tourists, as they should have many more trips in the near future. A land lahem zvat chalav udvash. I told them I'd give them a land flowing with milk and honey, the fairest, the tzvi, the most dear. It's almost like a deer in Hebrew, and deer, the dearest of the lands to me of all the lands. There are places where Israel is called Eretz HaTzvi, and here God refers to it that way. And I said to them, I took you out, I'm going to give you this great land, and so get rid of all your idolatry, all the horrific things. But they rebelled against me. But they didn't listen to me. They refused to listen to me. They wouldn't throw away their idols and the horrific, sinister things from Egypt. So I said, I'm going to vent all my anger upon them. But for my own name, for my own reputation, would probably be the best translation of this idea of my own name, that I might not be profane, my reputation not be insulted, and not be diminished. I didn't do that. And I still brought them out of Egypt. And right, we have different understandings of the Bnei Yisrael. There's this midrashic understanding of Bnei Yisrael. In Egypt, they're on the 49th level of Tumah. They are so bad. And it's an act of chesed, an act of kindness when God comes in and takes them out. And that's sort of what's being said here by Yechezkel. Bnei Yisrael were doing terribly, and God didn't do it because they had done anything righteous. There are other midrashim that point to different things that Bnei Yisrael did right, things that they kept even when they were in exile, even when they were oppressed, even during the difficult days. But this is that sort of that 49th level of Tumah type idea. Votzieam, we're in verse 10. Votsiei meretz Mitzrayim v'aviem el midbar. So I took them out of Egypt and brought them into the desert. V'atein lahem et chukotai v'et mishpatai. Hodati otame asher yaseh otam adam v'chai bahem. And I taught them my laws, my statutes, through which they shall live. And we talked many times about the different verses and ideas that Yechezkel works off of a lot about the end of Sefer Vayikra with Parshat Bechukotai, Bechukotai Telechu, Vetmitzotai Tishmeru, which we see aspects of this verse, and as well here V'chai Bahem, important verse that you shall live by them, which the rabbis see as a very, very important verse. V'chai Bahem, Torah is supposed to be something that you're supposed to live by. It's not supposed to cause your death, other than in certain instances. It's supposed to be something that keeps you alive and enriches your life. Unfortunately, there are other religions that don't seem to be as much into the idea of life. We won't go too far into that. Verse 12, and I gave them my Shabbat to serve as a sign that they might know that it is I who sanctify them. Right? You are my representatives. We are in communication. I created the world in 6 days, and the seventh day I rested, and you should do the same. Nevertheless, Vayamruvi Beit Yisrael b'midbar. But they rebelled against me in the desert. Bechukotai lo halachu. Again, back to the end of Vayikra. They did not follow my chukim. They didn't go in my ways. Mishpatai ma'asu asher yaseh adam v'chai bahem. They rebelled against me. They didn't follow my ways, which are the ways that give life. They profaned my Shabbat, and I wanted to destroy them. Now, we only hear a couple of instances in the Torah of the destruction of or desecration of Shabbat in the desert, the person who's gathering wood, and right. So it's very limited. But here, Yechezkel is saying as if it was something that seems to be pervasive. We don't see that. Verse 14, but again, for my own reputation, I kept them alive. Because I swore to them in the desert that I would not bring them to land flowing of milk and honey that I assigned them to. Because, right, they sinned, and I said, this we know, of course, in the aftermath of the sin of the Meraglim, where God says you're going to be in Egypt for 40 years. Yad b'mishpatai masu v'tchukotai lo halachu b'hem v'chaptotai chilalu k'achrei gulem libam holech. Because they rejected my rules. Again, this is in Bechukotai. The second half, first comes the blessings in Bechukotai, and then the curses and the destruction that's going to happen there. They didn't keep my Shabbat. They continue to worship idols. But I didn't destroy them completely. You'll remain in the desert. That generation will die out. I'm not going to kill you. Eventually, it will happen. I swore to Avraham, to Yitzchak, to Yaakov, for my own reputation, I won't destroy you, but you are not going in. V'omar al b'neihem, we're in verse 18, Bamidbar b'chukei avotechem al telechu v'mishpatehem al tishmoru uv'gluleihem al titamu. And I said to their children, don't follow your ancestors, don't follow your parents, right? Don't defile yourselves. Right? It's not God against kibud avayim, but it's against the sinning of the previous generation. I am the Lord your God. Follow my statutes, my rules. Observe them. And makes the Sabbath sacred. And it will be a sign between you and I, between me and you, that you know that I am the eternal God. But you continue to rebel against me. Again, all this bechukotai over and over again. Again, the same thing with this next generation. You rebelled against me, and you desecrated my Shabbat, etc., etc., and I was ready to destroy you. But I pulled my hand back. Again, for my reputation, for my name, lest that I be profaned in the sight of the other nations. We know, of course, this argument, and we've seen it already a couple times in this chapter, is made by Moshe. when God wants to destroy the Jewish people after the sin of the golden calf, after the Egal Hazav, and Moshe says, don't do it. What will the other nations? They'll say you weren't able to defeat the gods of the wilderness. You might have been able to defeat the gods of Egypt, but not the gods of the wilderness. I was going to scatter them. I was going to exile them. Yan Mishpatai, we're in 24 Lo Asu v'chukotai Masu v'chaptotai chilelu v'achrei gulei avotam hayu eineim, because they didn't listen to my rules, again, over and over again, the chukot. They desecrated my Shabbat. They worshipped idols. Here's an interesting verse. And so therefore I gave them, therefore it's not really the literal translation, I also gave them laws that were not good and rules by which they could not live. It seems to be strange. Why would God do that? It seems like it's a quid pro quo. They didn't listen to my good rules. So I gave them now bad rules. I gave them almost the direction that they would continue to go down this bad road that they had gone in. And I the Bahavir Kolpeta Rechem Racham Laman Asimeim Lam Ashimeim Laman Asher Yedu Asher Ani Adonai. When they set aside every firstborn, I defiled them by their very gifts. I might render them desolate, that they might know that I am God. And here we get back to some of the things that were earlier in this book that we talked about, and we had sort of transitioned away from them. That Bnei Yisrael will know that God will know God because of the destruction. They'll know that God is serious because of the destruction, because of the exile, because of the destruction of Yerushalayim. And then in the last number of chapters, there was sort of a little bit of a nechama at the end, where it said, "You're going to know that I am God, because I will bring you back to Israel, because some of you will remain after the destruction." But here, as we go back in this history lesson, we're being told that Bnei Yisrael will know about God because of the destruction. So now, mortal man, speak to the house of Israel and tell them this: your ancestors, they rejected me. They committed evil and trespassed against me. And yet I brought them to the land that I promised them. Right, I gave them the land. But what happened? They saw the hills and all the trees, and they started with their idolatry there, all over, pour libations, and instead of bringing me the pleasant odors, the reach nichoach, and my mizbech, they brought it to all the other gods, all the idolatry, every nice brook that they could find. And I said to him, what is the shrine? And here we get a lesson of etymology according to Yechezkel, that's why it's called a bama, because God said to them, bama, what is this? Mazeh. Bama, and that's what's called over and over again in the Tanakh, the high place, the hills upon which Bnei Israel brought sacrifices to other gods. So Yechezkel, these people, the elders of Israel, they want to know what I have to say. This is what I say: if you follow the ways of your ancestors and you go astray and you worship idols, I'm So tell them, if you continue to take your children and you pass them through the fire for idolatry, what will my response be? Right, I will not respond to you. I will ignore you. And if you say we're going to be like the other nations, we're going to worship wood and stone. We're in 33 I swear, God says, I will reign over you with a strong hand and an outstretched arm and with overflowing fury. And here in this chapter, this verse, really, the chapter is sort of put together. God goes all the way back into Egypt. I took you out of Egypt despite the fact that you were not good. Maybe as a promise to Abraham to fulfill my oath that I had given to him. And I took you out, and we know, of course, as readers of the Torah, readers of the Tanakh, that God took them out. Biyad chazaka v'zroa netiyah, with a strong hand, with an outstretched arm. And here, that strong hand and that outstretched arm are going to come and rage upon Bnei Israel. And with a strong hand and an outstretched arm and overflowing fury, I will bring you out from the peoples and gather you from the lands where you're scattered. So here we see, will there be nechama? And I'll bring you into the desert, the wilderness of different peoples, and there I will judge you face to face. Kasher nishpati et avotechem bamidbar eretz Mitzrayim kain ishafet etchem le'uma Adonai Elohim. I will judge you just like I judged them in the wilderness, in the desert, alone, not with everybody else. V'avarti etchem tachat hashavet ve'eveti etchem b'moh soret habrit, and I'll make you pass under the shepherd's staff, the way, right, one sheep, as it were, at a time. And I'll bring you into the bond of the covenant, right? This image of one tachat hashavet, one sheep or one cow or whatever it might be at a time, is of course the image we know of from Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. The idea that God looks at each and every one of us, only one person at a time can go through that door. Uvaroti mikem hamordim vaposhim bi meretz migurei motzi otam ve'eled mat Yisrael lo yavo vidatem ki ani Adonai. I will remove from you the rebels, the transgressors. I will take them out of the countries where they live, but they will not enter the land. And then you will know that I am God. Right? So now God is saying, I'm going to judge, but not all of you. The sinners will die. Vatem beit Yisrael kol amar Adonai Elohim ishkulu lav l'chu avodu v'achar im einchem shomim elai v'etshem kodshi lo techolu od. And so, house of Israel, go, worship your gods, continue if you don't obey me. But don't profane my holy name anymore. Don't bring idolatrous gifts. Don't pretend like you are with me. Ki bahar kodshi bahar merom Yisrael. Because upon my holy mountain, on the lofty mountains, Numa Adonai Elohim sham yavduni kol beit Yisrael kula be'eretz sham eretzeim. Because on this high mountain, there, all of Israel must worship me. Don't go to the Bama. Don't go and worship. Don't go worship other gods on every brook, under every, beautiful tree. You come to my mountain. You bring your sacrifices there. With the sweet smell. I will have a desire to be together with you. Right? With these sweet smells. Then I'll redeem all of you from the different lands. You will come to Israel. I will be with you. Just as I scattered you, so I will take you back. And interesting there, right? V'niktashti goes back to, we had the word v'shachanti b'tocham all the way back. We talk about the building of the Mishkan originally, and here we're talking about Bnei Yisrael coming back and having kedusha again, being together with God. Vidatem, and then you will know. So here we have what we mentioned earlier, the reversal. Earlier, the Yediat Hashem was through the punishment, through the destruction. But now at the end of the chapters, we've had in the last number of chapters, the Yediat Hashem, the knowledge of God, the knowing that God is supreme and in charge, comes from the restoration. Again, I'll just start from the beginning, 42. Membet vidatem ki ani Adonai ba'evi etchem el admat Yisrael el haaretz asher nasati et yadi lateto talabotechem. So now when I bring you back to Israel, then you'll know that I'm God. When I bring you back to the land that I swore to your ancestors, to your forefathers and matriarchs and patriarchs, and there you will remember your ways. V'kol alilotechem asher nitmeitem bam v'nakotem b'fnechem b'chol ro'otchem asher asiti. Vidatem ki ani Adonai ba'asoti etchem. And again, you will know that I am your God when I bring you back. Laman Shmi. And I'm doing it for my name, for my reputation. Lo chedarchechem ara'im. I'm not doing it because of your evil ways. Ucha'alilotechem hanishchatot. Nor for, your terribly corrupt acts. Beit Yisrael nu'um Adonai Elohim. So says God. So you want to tell the people of the elders, want to know, they want to inquire, they want to know what's going to happen, what I'm going to do. Well, this is what they need to know. You'll know I'm God from the destruction, and then you'll know I'm God from the redemption. And maybe then you'll understand to stay with me and not just to go and to resort to your idols, to the leafy trees, everybody will see. And it's sort of like you think about it these days more than ever, unfortunately, with the war in Gaza and all of the anti-Semitism, and just ask yourself over and over again, how are the Jewish people still here? It can only be that it's miraculous. It doesn't make sense. Whether it was Tolstoy who wrote it or Mark Twain or so many others, the fact that we are still here, that we are still alive, that we are still connected with God, we're still connected with our land, we're still connected with our Torah, is partially because of our stubbornness, but so much more so because of God coming back and letting us know that we are still part of this covenant, part of this relationship, and may it only strengthen in the coming times.